DC Multiverse!
G'day everybody, welcome back. My name is Brad the DC Universe Geek. For those of you who may be new here, if you're someone who's returning, thank you for coming back to my channel and checking out this review of the McFarlane DC Multiverse Court of Owls, Talon, Deathstroke, and Collect-to-Build Atrocitus. Now, I know that none of these figures are exactly what you would call new on the YouTube review scene, but like other figures that I've been trickling videos out of lately, they're just characters I've been sitting on. Each of the figures, aside from Atrocitus, the Collect-to-Build, comes with their own accessories. The obligatory action figure stands, the trading cards, except for Atrocitus, because he's the Collect-to-Build, so he also doesn't come with a trading card, and then various weapons. Deathstroke comes with the God Killer sword, as well as a dagger that fits snugly in a little boot holster, while Talon comes with two swords, a scabbard that pokes into a little hole in his back, and two knives. So let's take a look at all three of them up close and personal, starting with Atrocitus. Atrocitus is the last figure for me to review for the Collect-to-Build Blackest Night Collect-to-Build Atrocitus wave. Previously, I've already reviewed Kyle Rayner along with the other Black Lanterns in a video that showcased not only those figures, but also Necron. I figured it made more sense to review all four of those characters together. Now, one thing I find that I say a lot about McFarlane figures is the texture. I love it when a bodysuit actually has its own butt cheeks. Sorry, just look at, oh my god. To me, it just makes the figure look more slightly realistic, I suppose, that, you know, there's actually something more to it than just like a straight muscle suit, and not every character needs it. A character like Bizarro, I feel like the overall texturing of the suit would actually be too much, and it would possibly even wreck the visual appeal. But sometimes it works, and I think that this is one of those cases. I like how clear the emblem is on his chest. These shoulder pauldrons right here, when you put those on, if you haven't built them yet, you'll find out you'll probably want to glue them down. My friend Rob D Toys from Instagram sent me a message saying that he actually glued his down, and it made a lot of sense because they just don't want to stay on. You've also got nice red that goes all the way down. I love the detail on both of his gauntlets here. That Red Lantern styled gauntlets. I'm not sure exactly how much he has in the comics off the top of my head, or if this is just over detailed or more detailed than what you would have gotten, but I like it. I think that it matches the McFarlane aesthetic, and I think it actually just matches the overall aesthetic of the figure. Like, I can't remember the original artwork of the character being this detailed with this much line work and stuff like that in the comic books. Atrocitus has a fantastic head sculpt. I like this a lot. This is a really well done Atrocitus face. Sometimes you look and go, well, the paint looks kind of garbage, or possibly the sculpting could have been a bit better, but I like this. I think that Todd's team has done a fantastic job. Here he is compared to my other Atrocitus figure, because, well, I only have one Atrocitus figure aside from this one. And then why don't we bring in the DC Essentials Sinestro and Hal Jordan? Not a bad little classic trio. And then finally, let's use the McFarlane Toys, Hal Jordan on the one side and Kyle Rayner on the other. I think he is a fairly articulated figure as well. I mean, the torso gets an absolute metric butt ton of articulation. Even forward, he gets articulation forward. They don't always get that. The head's on a ball joint. He's got that big collar that doesn't really get in the way as much as you may assume. It actually pretty much stays out of the way. The shoulder pauldrons, of course, are going to get in the way of, oh wow, well that's actually not nearly as bad as I was thinking. I haven't even touched the articulation yet, so I was seeing it as you were. I just assumed. Well, I guess I made an ass out of me. You got the socket, the rounded hinge, and it definitely could be a lot worse. I was assuming we were going to get about that, but we don't. We get a bit more. It is kind of weird looking, but anyway, bicep swivel, double jointed elbows. Let's move them in away from the pauldron. That's not too bad. And then wrist articulation by way of the rounded hinge, and you can't really see it, which is good. I will take a little bit less articulation if I can't see that ugly round ball. Then we have, not only this, but we have the waist articulation, and we know that'll be 360 all the way around. The rubber flexing and moving out of the way. Down here in the groin, you have that McFarlane type articulation, that semi-ratcheted hinge that is very articulated. I will tell you, I actually glued both of the legs onto the pegs when building him because they would pop off a lot easier. So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to mess with that. Let's just glue him on. I don't plan on ever taking him apart. And there's actually that motion that I like. There's a lot of it with this figure. Yeah, I like that very much. He's also got really nice, handy-dandy double-jointed knees. No complaints on what they can do. As usual, the knee joint is, you know, a tad ugly where it connects. You can see all that meat. I don't always bring that up because sometimes it's just not that big of a deal, but I do want you all to know that I do notice that kind of thing. It is something that is on my radar. I just don't usually mention it or complain about it. But, okay, then we have the rounded hinge in the ankles. Roundy, up and down on the pivot with, you guessed it, a broken toe. So all in all, a pretty cool figure. Definitely glad that I got the whole wave so I could put this guy together. Even if I wasn't interested in the Blackest Night characters, I definitely would have picked up the whole wave just to get Atrocitus. And now we look at Deathstroke, one of my favorite Batman/Teen Titan Rogues villains. It's a very cool looking figure, clearly based off of the Rebirth style of how his suit looked, and nothing like the New 52. Those two suits are about as different as a donut hole and a butthole. There are a lot of extra details on this figure that aren't anywhere on the comic book version of the character, but the basic comic book appearance of this character has been maintained quite well. Like, Todd's approach to how to do a Deathstroke figure is very cool. I really hope that someday he decides to make the classic. Until then, this one will do just fine. Love that belt, by the way. All the way around the back here, it continues. Leg straps around his thigh. He's got his little knife scabbard right there around his calf. Having punchy knuckles right there, you can see, so he doesn't break him as he's punching people in the face. I love all the line work on this figure. It's in the white. It's all down the body here. You've got it in his upper thighs. This is actually really cool. I love Todd's take on a comic book version of Deathstroke the Terminator. Interestingly enough, Deathstroke's head sculpt is actually made out of two separate pieces. And if there was ever any question whether that's the case or not, and if there's ever any question about that, well, you just look where the orange meets the charcoal gray down at the bottom of his chin here, and you can see they don't quite meet up. He's got his little strings here hanging from the back. A handy place to stick the God Killer sword right on his back like that. Fits tight enough that it won't just fall off. And as previously mentioned, the dagger fits nicely in the little scabbard on his calf there. Here he is, wedged in between the McFarlane Arkham Origins Deathstroke, as well as the DC Essentials Rebirth era, and boop! Oh, look at that! He shrank, and now he's just a little baby Deathstroke from Spin Master. And then just for fun, I thought maybe we would bring in the DC Universe Classics version, so we can see exactly how much the suit has changed over time. As for his amount of articulation, well, let's see. I have yet to really test it. So we have the shoulder hinges with the socket doing a good job there. We got the bicep swivel. It's going to be 360, elbow crunching up like that so that he could grab his sword if he wants. And we can put that to the test just by putting it to the test. Of course, hingy wrists, so we know what they're going to do. They clickety ratchet into place. His noodle is on a ball joint, and dude, I'm telling you, this guy gets a lot of articulation. Look at that. He can look up. It's almost like he's a flight figure. Now, because Deathstroke is also a martial arts expert in many fields and disciplines, it's important that he has good torso mobility. And this is actually fairly good. I am very pleasantly surprised. The waist, it'll be 360 swivel as always. Incorporating both gives a great range of motion for the torso. And then we have the usual down here. What does he get as far as roundy motion? In and out. The knees for this guy are double jointed. How far up can these legs go with these double jointed knees? Yeah, that's okay. The trunks area, as usual, is going to get in the way a little bit, but for someone like me, that's not really a huge deal. And then we have right here, we have the molded hinge pivot here. I don't want to say it's just a rounded hinge, because it's not really a rounded hinge. Like, I do suppose it would fall into that category, but, you know, it's the molded kind. It does the pivot, and then, of course, we have Mr. Toe articulation right there. Overall, I think this is a fantastic attempt at Deathstroke. It's articulated enough, and it certainly looks the part. And next we come to the third and final figure for this review, Talon. Certainly one of the coolest out of all of the newer designs from the New 52 onward, and I'm glad that Talon still has a place in the DC universe at large. It makes sense that he got so popular. I mean, he's basically a ninja, only he's got that really interesting looking face sculpt. I mean, look at that facial design. That is really cool, and Todd did a great job taking that facial design and converting it into an action figure. Here he is compared to my only other Talon figures. I got a little bitty Spin Master one over here, and then I have the Greg Capullo version over there. That Greg Capullo version is amazing. That's a fantastic looking figure. Not as articulated as this one, though. Now, this figure comes with the 2 knives, as previously mentioned, and of course, the 2 swords. The thing is, there is no place on this figure anywhere to put those knives that he has, so that kind of sucks. One thing for sure that I'm going to have to do once I'm finished making this video is do something about this whole scabbard issue. For one, the swords just pop right out like that, and I really honestly don't know why this is a thing. Why we couldn't just have a complete scabbard. We're not idiots. I mean, many figures have came in the past with a full scabbard that we know to just pull the weapon out. So there's no need to have this like thing going on like that. Also, it really doesn't like to, see, I keep bumping it and it keeps popping out. It really doesn't like to stay. It is very loose because the peg just fits inside that little hole in his back, but the problem is the peg isn't long enough to, I mean, it has to clear the distance, the thickness of the strap, and then also the hole is sunken in to his back, a little hole in his back there, and, oh, the sword just fell out, of course, let's just take them both out. And then very little of the peg is actually recessed into Talon's back. So that would be something I really don't like about this figure. I mean, it's cool that it comes with the scabbard. I just wish that the scabbard had been executed a little bit better. And again, it would have been really nice if there was some place to stick Talon's fighting knives here, rather than just having him hold them all the time. And when he's not holding them, they go, I don't know, somewhere, someplace magical. He does have some neat detail, though. You have the inclusion of the medallion, all of those daggers across his chest, this really cool owl. I'm assuming this is like a guard, like a wrist guard, like a shield. Another thing about this figure that I'm not too keen on that I might change is that you have these pieces right here, right up in the top of his headwear, and these are actually not part of the suit. They're just there to hold those in place. But they really stick out, and it's clear that they're just extra structural pieces of golden color plastic. But let's see how articulated he is, though. That head sculpt, which I really haven't put, well, any of this figure through its articulated paces yet, is, that's to be expected. I mean, his head basically is like a sausage on top of a ball peg here, so it's, you know, it's as expected. It's getting what I thought it would get. Very little. And then you've got this piece under here, which is a separate piece. It does not move. It's not articulated. Of course, we have the rounded hinges with the socket, the bicep swivel, double jointed doubles. What do these get? I always like to check that. Very nice, very nice. Rounded hinge in the wrist. You don't really need me to go through it. He's got torso articulation that is very good always, except for, well, I suppose that could be a lot worse. Push it all the way. Let's add the waist in there too. Well, yeah, that's all right. That's good enough for me. And of course the waist is going to be 360 swivel. Down here, you will find that although he has that same McFarlane type of groin articulation that they all have, that his tunic right here that hangs over, much like Robin's actually, gets very much in the way of what he can get. Like, that is it. That's all you're going to get. That's forward here. That's backward. So be prepared to not be able to get him in so many ninja-like poses because of this tunic. And of course, that's it's okay, bordering on abysmal. It could be a lot better, but could be worse. Double jointed knees, and they do that. Ta-da! What double jointed knees do. And then, of course, as always, say it with me now, we have the rounded hinge that's also a pivot, and we have the toe articulation. So all three of these figures, I'm definitely glad that I managed to get my hands on. I love being able to build out my roster with basic heroes and villains. I'll take basic comic book continuity characters over specialized storyline ones any day of the week, except for Hush, and The Dark Knight Returns, and Batman 3 Jokers. Okay, but those three storylines were must-haves. Anyway, I'll just leave this review here. Hopefully you folks found this to be an interesting, useful, insightful waste of time, and I will see you with the next one. Have yourself a DC day, everybody. Happy collecting, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.